Don't forget about that great service called Defender. And tons of resources here. Sorry, shameless plug, I wrote a book. Might want to get the book. But also, look at the one on the right. This is new. That just launched here this morning. We have a new Microsoft Learn module that we just published.
Pretty exciting.
Yeah, so go to Microsoft Learn and learn about that. And so excited to be at this event and so excited to finally launch SQL Server 2022.
Where can people find you this week?
Where can people find me this week? Well, I've got several different sessions to do, but I am doing some book signings. That's kind of weird, but yes. Right near lunchtime or so, if you look on the schedule, if you go to the booth, I'll be signing some books, and I'll be all over the place on all sorts of different sessions.
Great, awesome. Well, thanks, Bob, for coming on Data Expo.
Thank you, and appreciate it.
Yeah, great to have you. And for everyone watching, of course, we have people in the room. We also have folks online. I forgot to mention, if you have questions, go ahead and add your questions. We'll either take them at some point during the session or at the end of the session. And I got good news that we are streaming online. So everyone who's joining in person, can you help me prove to the people online there's people here? Awesome. It's very exciting to have people in the room. Okay, so we're going to keep moving along. SQL Server 2022 sessions, these are the highlights. If you want to go check out more about SQL Server 2022, there's a bunch of sessions happening throughout the week from the product group. I see a couple of people taking pictures. We are going to move right along. Now, one of the cool things about SQL Server and Azure SQL is a lot of these updates that land in SQL Server also land in Azure SQL. So I wanted to highlight a couple things that are now generally available across Azure SQL Database and Azure SQL Managed Instance. One is Azure Synapse Link for SQL, so this applies to SQL Server and Azure SQL Database. Also, Query Store Hints is now generally available in Azure SQL Database and Managed Instance, also in SQL Server. A couple really exciting things that are now in preview across some of the different services, but we are going to take a closer look at performance. So we have Kate from the performance team tell us all about some of the updates. So Kate, welcome.
Thank you, Anna.
So tell us, what's been going on in the performance space?
Just a couple things. Just a couple, one or two. So as you can see here, we have we've been expanding this idea. So query processing, so IQP in this slide stands for Intelligent Query Processing. And query processing is all about taking the resources that you have available on your machine and doing the most that you can with them. And the tree, or our family of intelligent query processing features has grown substantially in our SQL 2022 release. You can see all the things here in the dark blue are new things that we have improved or added to the tree for SQL 2022. And I'm going to call out CE feedback because that's also in public preview in Azure. I didn't make your slide, but it is. But all these features are going out in SQL 2022 today. But there's also the ability to not just do the most with the resources you have, but to make those resources work more effectively. And so this is work sort of on the under the hood side. We've made improvements in scalability and management and availability, taking those resources and making them work faster. So, Bob just was talking about availability groups. We've made improvements there. We've made improvements to Query Store. We've made improvements to page latch contention, things like that. So we've made a bunch of it. This is a long list. We've done a lot of work to make those resources work better, more effectively. So the sessions that you might want to catch to learn more about these specific topics. Bob and I have a session on Friday morning. There's also a session tomorrow afternoon that David Pless and Kevin Farley are going to do about that sort of resource usage stuff. There's a focus group that I'm running with Kendall Friday afternoon, and then there's an on-demand video by our very own Erin Stellato about Query Store.
Awesome. Kate, you got a lot of stuff going on. Can I ask you, what is your favorite new thing?
I can't have a favorite. I love them all.
You love all your children.
I love them
equally.
all.
Okay. Well, you'll just have to join Kate in some of her sessions.
But I can talk all day about CE. If you want me to, I can, but I probably shouldn't.
Awesome. Cool. Kate, thanks so much for coming on the show.
All right. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Kate Smith. All right, so you kind of are maybe getting the vibe of this show. We're going to go through all of the new things with the people that are going to be presenting them, and hopefully you start to look at your calendar and see all the sessions that you want to attend. We got a question. Yes?
Are these slides somewhat? I don't see them connected to the video.
Great question. So the question was, are these slides here? Now, because of all of these things just being announced, a lot of them, we could not upload the slides in advance, but we will upload them. And the session and everything in all the sessions, all the links, will be at that aka.ms/news update. So you should be able to get all of it. Great question. Okay, so we're going to move on to Azure SQL Managed Instance. This is what has become generally available: cross-subscription, point-in-time restore, transactional replication, something people have been asking about a long time, log replay, on and on and on, backup transparency. Then we go to some of the things in public preview today or in the past couple weeks. But I'm not the expert on Managed Instance. As I said in the keynote, I know the Managed Instance team. I was able to bring them here. So I'm going to bring up Niko, who has so many updates that I'm not sure he's going to be able to fit them in. But he's going to try. You got a timer there?
Of course not, because you'll see what we brought for you today. Just a little bit of things. If I'm over time, you're going to throw me out of the window, from the stage. Anyway, does it work?
Does
the
it?
clicker?
Did it lose the battery?
Okay, I can do it like this as well. So 14 is a magic number. You might have never guessed. My favorite number, by the way, for some reasons, and we've got 14 improvements that we just announced today. And we've got 14 sessions, and I will take 14 minutes to present. No, sorry. No, of course not. Stupid of me. Anyway, so why this number is important is just to see that every year since the GA on the 1st of October, in 2018, we have been bringing more and more features. It's pretty impressive what we've made so far, right? 28. Oh, wait a second, but that's before the announcement. You want to see the next slide? It looks like that. This is where we are. And it's just a soft reminder, the year is not finished, and we're by far not done with the features we are introducing in Azure SQL Managed Instance. So, these are the 14 sessions that my colleague and me, all of us, the product team, are delivering. Feel free to attend. Some of them are already, like the workshop that my colleague Danny and me delivered is already gone, but catch us later. So here are the little 14 things: SQL Server 2022 compatibility, hybrid data estate, instance and database mobility, backup improvements, cost optimization. We allow the customers to spend the right amount of money. We're doing a great job, probably. I don't know. I wouldn't know. Anyway, and then there is some little thing, a little bit groundbreaking, but how would I know? Managed Instance, November 2022 feature wave. Let's go over them. So we allow now, as of today, actually as of yesterday as well, but we just announced it today, we allow you to take a backup from Managed Instance and restore successfully on SQL Server 2022. And we will guarantee for quite some time that. So now when you migrate to Managed Instance, it's not like the Hotel California. You can check in but never check out. Yeah, check it out, But, if you establish the MI link feature for SQL MI, you can take a backup to Azure Blob Storage and then restore that backup. Would you like to go faster? Right? Who would like to go faster? Yes, like, whoa, that's what I like. All right, we are introducing, as of today, a gated public preview for not failing over to Managed Instance, as you might have seen on the keynote demo, also failing back online. That's an amazing feature. On the data mobility and migration, transaction replication is finally in GA. But wait, it's not like you can replicate only to Managed Instance. You can use the Managed Instance as a source for transactional replication that is also supported. And then log replay service. I have a weird description for the log replay service.
Is it appropriate?
Oh, absolutely, family friendly. So I describe it as a service that is the best used when your competitors are not following the best practices, but you are still supporting the log shipping from their solution over to ours. And by that I mean the checksum on the backups. We do not require it anymore. And it is in GA. Then, for those customers that need to replicate their data, let's say from production to development or for testing, whatever, or maybe ISVs that need to move their customers between different performance tiers, we introduce copy and move databases. And they are done in online fashion with the same technology that we have been showing you, which is called link feature for SQL MI. Then, even better, if you are a big enterprise organization, I've seen a lot of them running a tenant with multiple subscriptions, and each subscription serves for a different application, and sometimes they need to move the data. And we have been limiting, because of the security issues that we have found. Now, in the public preview, you can do a cross-subscription point-in-time restore. Is it enough? I got like a couple of seconds more, at least on my watch. Okay. So MSDB DBO backup set now contains all the backup. You do not have to run the extended events to catch those. Cost optimization. If you are using a out-of-failover groups technology between different regions, like for SQL Server, we do support that the secondary, the passive one, you will not pay the SQL Server licensing on it. Then, the feature wave, and with that, we are introducing a 10 times improved instance provisioning times, start-stop feature, so you can pause and resume the running of your managed instance, which is pretty cool for money saving, and we introduced the schedule with it. Then we introduced the zone redundancy, so on business critical service tier, you can put your availability group replicas in different availability zones, and there are very significant improvement for network traffic segregation and support for good old great technology for MSDTC. There are a lot of details, but I mean, unless you want to ramble me for 14 minutes, or 14 hours, anyway.
But that's why we have all the sessions, right?
Oh, yeah. Can I go? No, it's fine. Yes, please attend the session, ask us questions. Thank you.
I have one question for you, Niko.
Yes.
Fast provisioning.
Yes.
How fast?
Oh,
It
so,
was 3 hours.
so before that, the customers typically would see our provisioning being around 4 hours. And if you subscribe and activate the November feature wave, you will see the provisioning time under certain conditions which are already documented. We published a lot of blog posts and documentation. They will be 30 minutes.
That's pretty good. Awesome, cool.
Thank you so much.
Well, thanks so much, Niko. Always a lot of stuff happening in the managed instance space, as you saw from some of those charts. You can take a water if you want a water. But I hope you'll go check out the managed instance sessions. They got a lot of stuff going on. 14 sessions, 14 new capabilities. Start Stop is another really interesting one. There's so many good ones coming out. So we're going to move right along and talk about some of the updates in the Azure SQL database space. Okay, this includes updates that have happened before today and also updates that happen today. So there's a lot of exciting stuff up here. Some of the ones that I'm really excited for are, for example, for hyperscale, we're continuing to close that gap between, so you can now reverse migrate out of hyperscale. It used to be a one-way street, and this was something that customers were a little uneasy about moving from general purpose to a hyperscale because of that reason. But to get into the details, I'm going to bring up Muazma, who works on a lot of the features in Azure SQL Database, to tell us more about them. Use the clicker if you want. And so I just want to ask, like, what are your, I'll ask you, we'll see, Kate didn't answer. What's your favorite new thing?
So I am going to talk about the two features which are in preview, and I want you to go to all the sessions that we have planned this week for all of you to learn more about all of the things that are on this slide. So my favorite here are the preview features, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about that. So first of all, this is the feature in preview, which is external REST endpoints. Say what? Yes. So from a stored procedure within SQL DB, you can call any external REST endpoint from within that. That means you can call a cognitive service, you can call Power BI queries, you can call any REST endpoint that you basically have access to. This opens up a lot of future opportunities. We see customers using it for real-time sentiment analysis, a lot of different interesting use cases. This was early preview in May, and now from today onward, it's available in public preview. So please go check it out, test it out, give us the feedback, and let us know what you want to use it for and how are you actually using this in the different use cases that you have. The second one is a preview feature. So this would be available later this month, and there is a very good detailed session about that I think is happening right after this, that you can learn more about that. So we are actually introducing premium hardware series that includes two type of options. So you have options that is memory optimized or CPU optimized. And what you can get is, for the same price as Gen 5, 10% more CPU optimized premium series. And this would be available in limited regions. Again, as soon as it's available, you can go and try it out. The performance increase, we have already tested. It is going to provide that. And then we also have memory optimized. So we see customers looking for analytics and hybrid workloads using SQL DB Hyperscale. And this is where you can get that using a premium hardware memory optimized series. Please check that out again. Give us the feedback. The entire team is here. Most of the folks are coming to the booth sessions, and also a lot of focus groups happening in this space. So please, please, please go to these sessions, learn more about them, and then tell us your feedback. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Muazma. It looks like the slide has a mind of its own. Are you doing any more sessions this week?
I am doing a session on Friday, which is all about development and how you actually build apps with SQL DB. Please check that out. And then, as I said, there are a lot of different focus groups. I don't know why slides keep moving up. It just wants to go to migration and migrate. But there are plenty of those sessions, and I'm going to tweet about that as well. So please, please go check them out and ask any questions in those sessions as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Muazma. Awesome. Also, yeah, I'm not sure the slide doesn't seem to want to stop there, but there are a lot of Azure SQL database sessions happening throughout the week, so you get all the updates. And you can come talk to us in the booth as well. There'll always be people at the booth. So we're going to move right along because the PowerPoint wants us to talk about product updates in the migration space. We are always updating in this space, whether it's for Azure SQL or also helping out some of our friends on the Postgres and MySQL side. But the new place to migrate, what I'm seeing, is in Azure Data Studio. And I thought, who better to come tell us more about it than Carlos? So Carlos, why don't you join us? Yeah. And Carlos, I guess to get us started, like, can you tell us a little bit about, maybe people don't know about migrating with Azure Data Studio. Like,
Sure.
How does that work?
Yeah, so this slide is a quick overview of how it works. With this new extension in Azure Data Studio, you can start your migration journey with the data assessment and the assessment, so you can understand the migration readiness of your databases. And then when you are ready, you can collect performance data of your existing workloads and get Azure right size recommendations. And then you can perform online or offline migrations to the different targets we support. And that's something new I wanted to talk about. So we recently released last week the public preview of Azure SQL Database. So we support now migrations to Azure SQL Database offline. We were supporting already MI and VM. So that's something new if you want to check. Along with the SQL DB announcement, we also included a couple of new things. We introduced a new Azure recommendations model that is called Elastic. Has nothing to do with Elastic Pools, just to make sure. It is a flexible model that is not, it's a little bit different than the baseline, so you can get some savings and get some different SQL recommendations. The other thing that we are introducing is a functionality to export and save the assessments and also the SQL recommendations reports in case you want to share those reports offline. And here's a quick overview on how the offline migration works for SQL, Azure SQL database. Excuse me. So everything starts from source to target. So we have a SQL server on premises here, excuse me, and we have our Azure SQL database. With the Azure Data Studio extension, you need to follow a couple of things, but those prerequisites basically is to create a database and then create the schemas and everything. But again, using Azure Data Studio, you can use some different extensions that already exist, that are in public preview, to create the schema and get ready. And once you're ready, you create the Azure Database Migration Service, and it requires self-hosted integration runtime to kind of help DMS to be orchestrator and take care of all the different activities. And the activity for these migrations specifically is a logical migration. So you won't be using backups here, so data will be flowing from source to target. And yes, in case you miss it, we have a few sessions. There's a learning pathway about on-premises, migrating from on-premises to cloud. There will be more sessions. Product team will be here with me. We'll have some focus sessions. So if you want to share your feedback, happy to take it. So I guess that's all.
Awesome. Carlos, one question for you.
Sure.
What I've kind of noticed is that it used to be we had all these different tools. You know, we had DMA, SSMA, all these different tools for kind of preparing for the migration and then actually doing the migration. Now it seems like things are going more and more into Azure Data Studio.
That's right.
Is that the plan? Like you can do all your migration?
That's the plan, yeah. Actually, you can do, as you said, we used to have different tools for different things you need to do. Now we have Azure Data Studio for all the migration needs. And we are also, there is a couple of updates on the Oracle space and MySQL. Oracle has this database migration assessment that you can do if you want to migrate to Azure database for Postgres or to any of the Azure SQL targets. So you're right, it's one-stop shop for your migration needs, and yeah, we will continue working on this.
Awesome, cool. Well, thanks so much, Carlos.
All right, sure, thank you.
Great, we are rolling right along. So are people getting some of the updates that they hope to see? Yeah? Oh yeah, I'm excited about that. I will take that. Okay, cool. We're going to move right along. We're going to switch things up a little bit. I'm going to bring up Dhananjay, also known as DJ Data, and Dinakar. Oh, they're surrounding me. Here you guys go. And we're going to talk about hybrid. This is a clicker. So to get us kicked off, I wanted to ask, because some people might not be familiar, what is Azure Arc?
Yeah, so hi everyone. As we know, many customers are moving to the cloud era. But there are existing applications, thousands of them, databases that they're using today, as well as some customers who want to have a hybrid multi-cloud strategy. And that's where Azure Arc comes in. Azure Arc is a platform for new applications that are in hybrid, as well as existing services that you may be running in your data center or third-party clouds outside of Azure that you want to connect to Azure and start using some of the new services that are available in Azure today, even if you can't move all your data and applications in Azure. Now, there are two aspects of Arc. One is the Arc-enabled infrastructure.
Okay.
So if you have Windows Server or Linux Server, or you have VMware, vSphere, Hyper-V, these can be enabled by simply dropping an agent and connecting it to the cloud. And if you have Kubernetes-based infrastructure, that can also be enabled using Azure Arc. On those, then you can start bringing in services. And Dinakar and I are part of the data services team, which is SQL, and we'll talk to you about how you can use those SQL services in the cloud, like SQL Managed Instance and Postgres outside of Azure.
Okay, cool. So I kind of get what Azure Arc is, but if I was a customer, maybe some of the folks in the room, like what are the benefits of doing that?
Yeah, like Dinakar has a customer who wants to deliver database as a service, and they are using cloud best practices today, but their data can't be taken to the cloud. Plus, they have SQL Server today, and they have optimized SQL Server. So we have two solutions for Arc-enabled data services, as we call it. One, which is IaaS. So if you have a SQL Server or you're using SQL Server 2022, you can organize inventory, get patches, updates, use Defender, and start connecting your database to the cloud. Now, if you're going to a full cloud native model, then I have a customer, which is a manufacturing customer, and they are going full cloud native using containers, using microservices, Kubernetes. For them, we have Arc-enabled SQL managed instance, and then also Postgres. So quickly to go through this, if you have SQL Server today and SQL Server 2022, you should upgrade to that because it comes with that connectivity to Azure with Arc enabled. You can manage all your SQL servers, whether they are running in your data center, whether they are running in third-party clouds outside of Azure, and then also you're already managing your SQL servers that are running in the SQL VM in Azure. You can see all of those with a single view. You can control and govern them. So we are going to use purview access policies to be able to control them, and then protect all your data using Azure Microsoft Defender for SQL and Microsoft Defender for cloud. Now, if you're going full cloud native, then you have cloud native applications and you have SQL managed instance. Imagine being able to deploy that same application in Azure cloud, and then being able to use that same application and deploy it in third-party cloud. So I have a customer who's a retailer, and sometimes they want to deploy their database in Azure. Sometimes they want to deploy it on premises. They can use Arc-enabled data services. That will keep your database, manage the entire life cycle, keep it always current. You can get the elasticity of the cloud. You can get a unified management control plane through Azure and CLI and the same tools that you use, and the security patches and updates on a regular basis. And most importantly, you start using the cloud billing model. Anna, you showed how pay-as-you-go can be used, where here you can start using pay-as-you-go and other capabilities that we have in the cloud. And this can run on any hardware that runs Kubernetes, whether it's running in your on-premises data center, or even in Google Cloud or AWS Cloud or other third-party clouds.
Cool. I think it's really great because it's helping our customers kind of have the flexibility to kind of meet you where you are. If you're on-prem, we'll hook you up. If you're using Kubernetes, we've got something for you. And you can kind of choose while still getting these Azure benefits kind of wherever you are. Exactly. Now, how do I go about, we have these discussions about what to use when it comes to Azure SQL. How do you decide what to use when it comes to Azure Arc?
Yeah, so I think the number of choices can be confusing sometimes. If you have the option to go to Azure, that is your best place to be. Azure gets all the goodies, like you have plenty of choices from SQL DB to Synapse to SQL MI. But as you caught on with the theme of 2022, hybrid is here to stay, right? You will have SQL servers that are running outside of Azure. So how do we bring these Azure benefits outside of Azure, right? So you have two options here, SQL Server, Arc-enabled SQL Server, and Arc-enabled SQL MI. In the SQL Server model, you still continue to care and feed and manage the SQL Server. You just connect it to Azure, and you get Azure benefits like Defender, Purview, and things like that. In the other model, which is the SQL MI, as it says, it's a managed instance. This solution runs on top of Kubernetes. So there is some upfront work required for you to install, like you bring your own hardware, you install one of the CNCF certified Kubernetes clusters, and then you deploy the Arc SQL MI on top of it. And just by deploying the SQL MI, you get all the managed benefits like easy provisioning, deprovisioning, built-in high availability, built-in disaster recovery, built-in backups, built-in monitoring, like the whole suite of functionality that you get in Azure SQL MI, you get that with Arc SQL MI. So as you're making that decision, if you feel like you're logged into a specific version of SQL Server or some specific Windows-only features that you use in the SQL Server today, you might want to go with Arc SQL Server. But if you want to modernize and get all the managed benefits, you want to consider Arc-enabled SQL MI.
Got it. That helps a lot. Okay, so now we know what to use when. How do I get it?
That's a good question. So Arc enabling or SQL Server is as simple as like running an AZ command or downloading a script, and you can do this at scale. Some of our customers are Arc enabling like hundreds of servers in like an hour. You just run the script at scale, and it just connects these SQL servers to Azure. You go to your Azure portal, you see the SQL Server show up in your resource group. For the Arc SQL MI, like I said, it's a bit of work involved. You want to procure some hardware. You need to find out what Kubernetes distribution you want to use. Then you want to install the Arc data services, and then you migrate your existing SQL Server data into Arc SQL MI.
Awesome, cool. Okay, final question. How do I learn more, and where do I find you guys at the conference?
Yeah, there are a lot of talks we are having. In fact, there's one by Ben Weissman that's going to be on how you can use SQL MI outside of Azure if you have data gravity, data latency issues. And then Tolga and I am going to do a talk on further drill down, like a level 300, to go into what Dinakar was just telling you about. And more talks coming in the days forward in the conference, so please attend those. And please come meet us at the booth. You know, there'll be Tolga, Lance, myself, Raj, Ajay, all of the ones. And it's not just Bob who gives autographs. Dinakar also offers autographs on T-shirts. So please take his autograph. He's a superstar.
He really is. Awesome. Well, thanks you guys so much for coming on and sharing more about hybrid. All right. So many updates. Okay, so here's some resources. We'll make sure we put these resources in the blog. So remember, the blog has all the links and all the updates, just aka.ms/news updates. That's where you'll find everything. Okay, so now bringing up some of my friends, Adam and Patrick. I thought they were going to talk about Power BI, but this morning, you don't know. This morning, Patrick said, we're going to talk about serverless, and I said, I don't know what that means. So welcome.
Thanks for having us, Erin. It's great. All right. So Patrick, we want to talk about data, right? This is a data conference. How many folks in here use Power BI?
Nice.
All right, so that's in the room. Looking at the camera, how many folks online use Power BI? Raise your hand. All right. So the thing I love about Power BI when we work with data and we work with the world's largest customers, it's all the Legos. I love Legos.
Building stuff.
I build a lot of Legos. And just being able to put all those together and make things work. So in our world, we work very closely with Azure Synapse Analytics, and we work with Power BI. And the thing that I love there is like Azure Synapse Analytics works to bring all of those Legos kind of together to make it easier to use. And there's just going to be, over the next year, 2 years, like every year, like stuff just keeps getting better with the amount of releases that keep coming out. So stay tuned. Every month with Power BI Desktop, it's like opening a gift. And it's always amazing. This month's release will be dropping either this week or next week. Just more great stuff coming. And so, Patrick, when we think about the Legos and we're pulling data together, what do we do? Like, what do we see our customers do?
So we see our customers use one flat table.
We do actually
see our customers. They use one wide flat table.
Not a lot.
But then you got to use the right tool for the job. You got to find the right thing for the purpose. And this is where I was talking about Anna. And Anna was like, what are you guys talking about? I was like, we don't know. We'll figure it out when we get up here. And so you have to figure out, and one of the things we try to minimize is duplication of data. And this is where Synapse, it plays well. And Rohan mentioned this in the keynote, if you're in the keynote. And I just want to echo, we're adopting this lakehouse strategy. And so you land your data in one place. You can use serverless or dedicated SQL pools, but then you have to decide, hey, how do I optimize this, Adam? And so it's all about the layers. It's like an onion. It's like an onion, right?
It smells.
It smells.
Makes you cry?
Makes you cry. No. It makes things faster.
Got it.
It makes
Onions
things
make
faster.
things faster.
And so a lot of our customers, they start, and we're not talking about, hundreds of thousands, or we're not talking about hundreds of millions. We're not even talking about billions of rows of data.
How many people, show of hands, how many have more than 100 million rows in your database?
Oh, look at that.
Look at that. All right.
What about 1 billion rows of data? All right.
A day?
So we actually have, here we go, 1 trillion rows of data, right? And so we're working with customers, and we build this in the layers, because imagine trying to take 1 trillion rows, and it's more than 1 trillion rows. Yeah, it's trillions of rows. Imagine trying to take trillions of rows of data from wherever that data resides, and then moving it to another place. Our customers, they're not happy with that, right? And they're trying to report on this in real time, close to real time as possible. And so what we do is we implement this strategy, what Adam and I like to call layers. So on top of this relational model that you create, you can actually create materialized views. This is the first step in the layers that we do, because we're not duplicating the data, we're just modifying the schema a little bit. And just inherently under the covers, Power BI, Synapse just says, hey, when you issue your queries, instead of going to that trillion row table, go to that materialized view where we probably aggregated that data down to a higher level of grain, right? So what would be the next step though, Adam?
So the next part's going to be on the Power BI side, right? And so what we want is we're going to be hitting those materialized views and or the base data that's in the Synapse warehouse. But on the Power BI side, we have this feature called aggregations. So again, it's another layer. And so, yeah, so we can aggregate things that's in memory inside of Power BI. That is blazing fast. And so in the one example with the trillions, what they did was the first layer being the aggregate inside of Power BI. So that was maybe 250 million rows. And then when they bring it down to the materialized view, that's maybe at a lower grain than what's in Power BI, but it's still not the full trillion. And then if they really need all that detailed data, that's when they hit the bottom layer with the actual data. So, and it's fast. Each layer has its own SLA in terms of performance. And so you need to craft your reports. This is why you just don't be like Patrick and just drag that nice little pie chart without a care to the world onto that happy little canvas, right? So don't do that. You got to understand what you're using, what visuals you're using, how are they going to be interacting in terms of your end users, how are they actually going to use the report, talk to your users, talk to your report users, find out what they need. Just because they say we want everything doesn't mean you should put everything on there because the business said so. That's crazy. So yeah, just be mindful of those things. So understand what the Legos are. Use the best capabilities, whether it's Azure Synapse Analytics, whether it's Azure SQL Server, whatever, or SQL database. Sorry, I even screwed that up.
Okay.
That's all right. That's not my world. So, but yeah, when you do that, just use the tools in those areas that can help you get the most performance. I would also challenge you too. You may be sitting there going like, my data's not that big. Why do I even care about it? It runs fine. And that's okay. But position yourself to understand what those best practices are at the different layers. So when whatever you're working on goes bigger, and it will go bigger, then you're better prepared and you're already set up for success when it comes to performance.
You're future-proofing your model. So I'm going to be full disclosure here. Anna said, hey, Patrick, and this is not Adam's fault. It's, hey, Patrick, can you put some slides in the deck? I didn't do it. I just didn't do it. But it's okay. And so if you want to learn more about what Adam and I are talking about, we have a session on Thursday at 2:15, and it's about refreshing your data. And we're going to talk about best practices that we, just kind of, it's like a broken record that we talk with our customers about every time we meet with them. Is like, do this, do that, do that. So if you want to learn more about that, we'll do that. We'll have that session at 2:15. And then,
more importantly, how many people have heard of the Power Hour? All right, seeing some hands go up. Okay, so the Power Hour, this has a long history in past community and whatnot. And so what this is there's going to be different stories told. You will not learn anything in this session, but it will be the funniest session you've ever seen. The only goal is to make you laugh, and we use technology to tell a story. But we can't guarantee you're going to learn anything. So that session, the Power Hour, is today at 4:15. I have no idea what room it's in. So you'll have to go to the internet search engine of your choice, but when you go to Bing, search for PASS, Data Summit and Power Hour, and you'll find it. There's an app. Okay, so you don't even need to go to Bing. See, I saved you all. And so be sure to get there early. It's always standing room only, so get there early to make sure you can get in. Tons of swag and everything else, so it'll be a good time.
Awesome, cool. Well, Guy in a Cube, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really hope y'all will check out the Power Hour because it's always a ton of fun. Okay, so we're going to move right along. For folks who haven't watched this type of episode before, we do it every month. One of the things that we do is we do a blog roundup. Now, we're going to go kind of fast through this blog roundup, but just know if you go to that link, aka.ms/news update, I'm going to keep saying it, that's where you're going to find all the blogs, all the updates, everything you need to know about what you've learned in this session is documented there, minus some of this Power BI stuff, because as you see, they don't add slides and they don't know when their sessions are, so they didn't send me anything. But you can talk to them about that. Okay, so we're gonna get into blogs and videos. I mentioned that we run a show called Data Exposed. We release a ton of episodes. Some of them are MVP editions, some of them are with our field folks, our SQL Insider series. We got lots of episodes that drop every week on Thursdays, sometimes on Tuesdays, so definitely check those out. Some of the things I wanted to highlight from the Azure blog, really just one thing here, I'm going to use the laser, it's this one. The Microsoft named a leader in the 2022 Magic Quadrant for Cloud Infrastructure and Platform Services. What a mouthful. You see Microsoft right here. So this is not related to cloud database management systems, where we're like, last year we were like up here. So just remember, we're really good on that front. However, this is a really big improvement for us, and if you go check out that blog, they talk about all the updates that we've made and all the improvements we've made, the momentum that Azure has made, some of it related to data. So I thought that was an interesting one to call out. I linked to a couple things related to data lakes, which Patrick and Adam were talking about as well as GPT-3 for those familiar with Copilot, and those who were in the keynote this morning saw what Lindsay did. A lot of cool stuff happening in the AI space. I can't help myself, I just include it. I'm not going to spend time going through all these blogs this time, but just know there were so many blogs. So on the SQL Server blog, there were a lot of things related to the releases. So if you want to dive deeper into anything you've heard about, that's a good place to start. There was also an Azure Data Studio announcement blog, and I'm not going to spoil all the details for that. For that, I'm going to bring up Erin Stellato from the Experiences team to tell us more about what's going on in Azure Data Studio and SSMS. So welcome, Erin.
Thank you. All right. So Azure Data Studio 1.40 released today. So that came out this morning. How many of you use SSMS? You thought I was going to say Azure Data Studio, didn't I? How many people use Azure Data Studio? Okay, so the first thing that I want to say is that neither one of those are going away, okay? And if you use SSMS and you love SSMS, that's fine. I'm not trying to convince you to go over to Azure Data Studio. But there are folks who do love Azure Data Studio and who it is the right tool for them to use. So we dropped 1.40 this morning, and in that we GA'd Table Designer and Query Plan Viewer. So Table Designer allows folks who are not DBAs, developers, right, for a long time, who know the T-SQL, to go ahead and create tables within Azure Data Studio with a graphical view. So we've had this in SSMS forever. This was something that we wanted to add to Azure Data Studio to make folks' lives easier. So that is now in GA. It also does generate the script down at the bottom. You have the ability to also create indexes. And then we also GA'd Query Plan Viewer, which is very near and dear to my heart. So for those of you who work with execution plans, who use them to troubleshoot performance issues or to do tuning, you now have the capability within Azure Data Studio to get your estimated plan, to get your actual plan, and a couple of things that you might not have seen before in our tools. You have a top operations tab, which is available, and there's like, I did a data exposed video, right? We talked for, I think it was, Hannah's like, how about 8 minutes? And I'm like, yeah, we're gonna do like 10. So I went through just Query Plan Viewer in 10 minutes.
It's really cool.
Yeah, there's a toolbar on the side. You still have right-click options. We also have plan comparison in there. So this is just a little video where you right-click on a plan. You say, I want to do a comparison. You go out and you select another plan. Then you're viewing them not side by side, but you can view them side by side. And then you go into the properties, and within the properties pane, we're showing you what's different. And I really like how we do this, right? We're calling out what's different, and then at the bottom, we have the equivalent properties collapsed by default. So really trying to highlight what is not the same between the operators that you've selected there. So hopefully that will make troubleshooting plan issues a little bit easier for some folks. And now, those were the two big things in Azure Data Studio, but there's a ton more. The first one was that we now have ARM64 support on Mac OS. This has been a request that's been out there for over a year. The team made it happen. If you ever use the Insiders build, we now also have support for ARM64 on Windows in the Insider build, so that's obviously going to be coming in a later release. We have a big change in connections in Azure Data Studio, and I actually have a couple screenshots to call this out specifically. When you first log into Azure Data Studio after you upgrade, I'm assuming it's not a new install, you've upgraded to 1.40, you're gonna see this message, which is gonna tell you, hey, if you have any existing connections, you might have to make some changes to that. And what we've changed is the encrypt option and the trust server certificate have been pulled to the front screen of the connection pane. And by default, encrypt is now true. If you haven't done anything with security, this might be entirely new to you. For those of you who are a little bit more security conscious, or you have had to be from a company perspective, I hope that you will see this as a good thing. But we've got documentation that talks a little bit more about this, and be prepared for that when you upgrade to the latest Azure Data Studio. We added some VS Code merges in, so some of you may know that Azure Data Studio is a loosely coupled fork of VS Code. So every so often we have to go and do some updates, which is great because we get a lot of the benefits from that. We've GA'd an extension called Query History. So as you are making changes to your queries, it will basically track those changes for you. And if, you know how sometimes you like go through there and all of a sudden you're like, oh, what was the version of that I wrote like 2 or 3 whatever ago that was really good, and you're trying to do Control-Z, you don't have to do that anymore. It's over there in the left-hand pane. Database migration assessment for Oracle extension is in preview. MySQL extension is in preview, so this is the #1 most requested issue out on Azure Data Studio GitHub. That is now available. And you heard discussion earlier about the offline migrations. And then finally, we have SSMS 19, which is currently still in preview. We are looking to GA that later this year. There's some stuff that we still want to bring in for SQL 2022. So you will see that coming. But again, as I said originally, we are investing in both of these tools, and you don't have to choose. Really, you can use both.
Cool.
That was a lot, right? I went through a lot really fast.
There's a lot going on. I'm excited to see all these updates. Where can people learn more this week?
Great question. Okay, so we have a session this afternoon. Now, I know that Patrick and Adam were talking about their BI Power Hour. No. We are talking at 4:15, exact same time. Way more fun. Like, I know that they think they're fun, but come on. We're going to talk about tools, and this will include Portal. So the SQL Experiences team does all the tools that I've talked about here, plus a ton of other stuff underneath, and Portal, and we're going to have a great session with myself, Jess, and Drew. I have a focus group tomorrow. So for those of you that use Azure Data Studio and have found some gaps, I want to hear about that. And then Drew has a DevOps session that is it's on demand. He's got the Q&A on Thursday, and he actually also has a theater session today at noon, which I didn't have on here, in the Microsoft booth.
Awesome, cool. Well, Erin, there's a lot of stuff going on. I'm excited to see it, and thanks for coming on the show.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Erin Stellato. Cool. Okay, we are rolling. Are people getting updates? Do you think we are doing some work over here on our team? Just a couple things going on. Okay, we're going to continue on with blogs and videos. Again, I usually do a scrape of all these, and I'll talk about all of them. Today, I'm not going to, necessarily take you through all this. I do like the Take the SQL Server Mac Challenge. Anyone using a Mac today? Just a couple people. Okay, well, if you have a Mac, encourage you to go try the SQL Server Mac Challenge. It's basically how quickly can you deploy SQL Server on a Mac. Also, lots of updates coming on. This is a great way to see what those updates are. You can see there's a continuation of this, so there's a lot of different updates coming through. We're just not going to talk about all of them today. On the Azure SQL side, this is where you're going to find, Niko talked earlier about those 14 updates for Managed Instance. You're going to find all sorts of blogs about that here, as well as some of the exciting new things like approximate percentile functions and other updates that have become available. So there's a lot of blogs, a lot of things to go read if you want all the updates, but I did try to summarize them at the beginning of the blog. Okay, now a big thing when we come and we talk about databases is always security. So I'm going to bring up Michael Howard to tell me a little bit about security. So Michael, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Was this one on? Can you guys hear me okay? All right, fantastic. Hey, actually, so the funny thing is, there's sort of a running joke in our group right now that I'm like the security nerd working amongst a whole bunch of database engineers. So I've worked at Microsoft for a long time, I've always been in security, dyed-in-the-wool security guy, so it's always really interesting to me to see the changes that have happened in SQL Server 2022. And to show you how old I am, I've actually worked with SQL Server since SQL Server 4.2 on Landman. So I still how many of you remember the authors database? Oh my God, I am old. Okay. So there's a bunch of new features that we added in SQL Server 2022. Obviously, Ledger is a big one.
What is Ledger for folks who don't know?
So Ledger is the way. How many of you have ever built a threat model?
Yikes.
Okay. So I have a session on Friday morning at 9:30 about secure design and security features in SQL Server and how to design a secure system from a security perspective, not just like throwing some features at the wall and seeing if they stick or not. But a very important threat is mitigating repudiation threats. It's like going back on a transaction. I didn't make that order. I didn't place that bet. When I placed the bet, the actual value of the bet was this, my bet was this size as opposed to this size. Going back on a transaction. Well, Ledger actually helps enforce non-repudiation. So it's a way of validating that transactions are correct and doing it with a very, very high degree of certainty. So it uses cryptographic controls to do that. So we can certainly talk about that. And actually, Peter Van Hove has a session on Ledger today. He has a session on Ledger either today or tomorrow. You should definitely go to that. So Ledger is obviously an incredibly important feature that's in SQL Server 2022 and in Azure SQL DB. Other changes are things like Purview integration is a big deal. One of my favorite things that's been added, in fact, probably my number one favorite, is TLS 1.3 support is now in SQL Server 2022. But it's actually a really big deal. It's bigger than just what you think. It's not just, okay, fantastic, you guys have finally got around to TLS 1.3. It's more than that. We've actually broken apart TDS and TLS. So historically, TDS and TLS were sort of intertwined with each other, and it made it very, very hard to do things like packet inspection. Well, now we've actually broken them apart. So the actual transport layer that is TLS and the application layer, which is TDS, have now been broken apart. So that has a couple of really important security benefits. Number one, it makes it easier to do packet inspection at the firewall, number one. And number two, it means that we can upgrade to newer versions of TLS much easier moving forward. So from my perspective as a sort of crypto nerd, that's actually a really, really big deal. Another one is AAD integration with SQL Server 2022. Right. Huge fan of Azure Active Directory integration from a security standpoint because the credentials are handled by Azure AD as opposed to being handled like on workstations or cached on the workstation. So from an attacker's perspective or mitigating attacker's perspective, that's just really, really important. Another one is PFX support. It's kind of a little bit niche, but it's kind of important. It's just an industry standard format for exporting and importing certificates with their private keys. And there's a myriad of others. It's great to see that Azure Data Studio has added that option in there that's sort of in your face, which is the ability to require TLS for the communication. By the way, one thing I want to point out, I'll go through this in a lot more detail on Friday. The option to encrypt the connection, it's not encryption, it's more than encryption. It's way more than encryption. And in fact, the encrypt is almost secondary. The most important part is the server authentication. Because you can't have a protected channel until you've authenticated the server. Because otherwise, you're whispering a secret to someone in a blacked out room, but you don't know who's in the room. That's why that setting is so important. It's not just the encryption of the channel, it's the server authentication you get first. So important. And so I'll go through that in a lot more detail on Friday and thinking about sort of secure design and what it takes to think about building secure systems based on the SQL Server database platform. Kind of all I got, really.
Cool. What's the, you're the security nerd in the database world. What's the number one thing you see database people not thinking about or missing or they could do better? Or...
Number one, by far, is when they install a SQL Server and they have a self-signed certificate on the server or no certificate at all. And so now you don't know if you're talking to your SQL Server or Baghdad Bob's SQL Server. You don't know. And that's why that encrypt option in a connection string is actually a lot more. In fact, that's secondary. It's the server authentication part that's so important, But it's not just restricted to databases, it's everything. You know, how are you building this thing? Well, we're using a self-signed certificate. It's like, no, you're not. You got to do it properly. You can't just go around using self-signed certificates. But on SQL Server, that is by far the number one thing I see, and it drives me completely bonkers.
I won't ask for a show of hands. You guys just know
Yeah, because it's be embarrassing. But I got a session on Friday morning. We'll go through a lot of this stuff, like in real gory detail, and we'll build up a solution as we go through it, and how we're designing a secure solution along the way, and what the threats are we're mitigating, and precisely how we're mitigating them using, the power that we have at our disposal.
Cool, awesome. And one more thing, Michael, you have a podcast, don't you?
Actually, okay, well, seeing as we're doing that, so yes, I'm a co-host of the Azure Security Podcast. We do it every 2 weeks. Heck of a lot of fun doing it. Get to meet a lot of great people. So that's the Azure Security Podcast. It's available in all the places. But as soon as you brought it up, I've also got a book, and it actually came out today.
Oh, that's exciting.
Finally. So Bob can just go take a hike. But the problem is it's available like today. In fact, I live in Austin, and my wife just told me that the books have arrived. But I'm here. So I'm going to get my daughter to take a picture of it with her with the book. But it's called Designing and Developing Secure Azure Solutions. And a big section actually is on databases. Huge section on database design, secure design, using databases. Primarily Cosmos DB and SQL Server and Azure SQL DB.
Awesome. Cool. Well, Michael, thanks so much for joining us. Check out Michael's podcast and new book out today. He's the guy for security, so you'll definitely want to check out his session on Friday. Thanks, Michael. And here's a list of some of the security sessions that are happening. Looks like there's one right after this on blockchain and SQL Ledger. Definitely recommend checking that out. It's so cool that we're bringing blockchain into databases. And then Michael's session later on Friday. All right, we're going to keep going. We have a dev blog site. So this is where you can go to get dev-related topics. This one's on CI/CD. It's 2 blogs, actually, really interesting. How many of you have ever filed a support case with Microsoft? Okay, so probably more than I would like to see. But the fact is, we have a support team, and they are incredible. And they deal with some of the most complicated problems ever. And then they blog about it. Of course, they don't give away any PII or anything like that. But the things that they see a lot are the things they learn a lot about. They blog about it. So this is just what they've blogged about in the last month. You can see some of the lesson learns and different things that they do. These are things that they see a lot. So I definitely recommend whenever you hit a problem, go to your favorite search engine, type Azure Database Support blog, and then whatever your problem is, because you're probably going to be able to find it in here. So I won't go through all of these, but you can learn a lot by using these. So finally, last but certainly not least, I'm going to bring up my co-producer, Marisa, to talk a little bit about Data Expose and some of the things we're doing this week. So Marisa, over to you.
Thanks, Anna. So as the co-producer, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about Data Exposed. So Data Exposed is a show hosted by Anna Hoffman. They are snackable, about 10-minute size episodes where we talk everything related to Azure data. We show demos, we explain topics, we go into the latest, greatest. Along with our shows, we do deep dive into a few series, and we listed some of the mini-series here. So for those who want to know more about Azure SQL Security, we have a series dedicated to that. Azure SQL Virtual Machines, so those who want to take their SQL Server skills and deploy, architect, and manage Azure SQL Virtual Machines, that's a good series to follow. We have a Migrating to SQL series. There is a SQL Server 22 series that is a preview series, but we'll also be doing, now that it's GA, we'll also have a GA series, so that's going to come. We recorded a lot of those episodes this week on campus, so that was a fun thing we did. And then we also have the SQL Server, or the SQL Insider series, where Anna talks with Microsoft's cloud solution architects, and they talk about some of the frequent problems that they have with customers and share about that. So these episodes launch every Thursday. We have a new one coming out every week. And then one Tuesday a month, we have a MVP episode. So we have our Microsoft MVPs come on and talk to us about what relates to them. While we're here, we're also going to do some more Data Exposed episodes. So in our booth, we have theater sessions, we're calling them. They're 15 to 20-minute sessions in our booth. We have them today, tomorrow, and Thursday. And Anna will be there recording or making some of these theater sessions as Data Exposed episodes. So for those in our audience on our YouTube right now, you'll get to get in on some of the past action and get to see some of these episodes.
Awesome, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, Marisa.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Cool, okay, so then the last two things, just to wrap up, I know we're just about at time. Two things I do every month. One is a Learn module of the month. How many of you have heard of Microsoft Learn? Great. So this is a great place where you can go and get hands-on for free. So even on Azure stuff, we'll give you a sandbox so you can deploy stuff for free. So definitely check out Microsoft Learn. Every month I highlight a module, a Learn module. This month I wanted to highlight a module that just came out today. It's called Introduction to SQL Server 2022. It was written in large part by Bob Ward. You can get the short URL there, aka.ms/learn SQL Server 2022. This is a great place to get all the text associated with what's new. So if you can hear about it in the sessions, then you go read about it in the Learn module. Finally, I always do a pick of the month. This is going to be a shameless plug. Anyone heard of TikTok? No one? You guys know what TikTok is. Come on. Okay, so I started this thing on TikTok. I'm also putting it on Twitter and other places. But basically, I take my dog for a walk, and I talk about something related to Azure SQL or SQL Server. They're like 30-second videos. So if you want to follow along, see my dog Moose, or any of the craziness that goes along with me trying to figure out the world of TikTok, you can check that out. That's it for our show and the session. Remember, this one link, aka.ms/news update, is the one to check out. You can see this blog is already live. So when you go in there, you'll see all the speakers we have, all the updates with links to learning more, updates also for other products, our videos, blogs, pick of the month, everything's in here. So can't recommend enough to go check out ak.ms/news update. I'll be here all week in the booth today and tomorrow. So if you have any questions, you want to come say hi, just thank you so much for spending your time after the keynote with me. And, for our folks online, we hope to see you next time on Data Exposed.